With Man United not playing for almost another 20 days, we might as well just make use of it and explore the top 3 options that we have in each of the positions that we're targeting this summer. Now, out of these 3 targets, we're going to make it such that they're players that we've seen, players that we have explored about, we have talked about, and not players like some midfielder in Sweden that nobody has talked about, nobody has really explored, and people are just going to go off comps. We're going to talk about players that we've seen performing in European leagues, in, let's say, European competition to a certain degree. So, let's start with centre midfielders. And in number 3, we have Carlos Baleba. Baleba would have been way higher on my list last summer. In fact, he was. He was probably my top option for centre midfielder. And even at 120, I remember there was a video where I said, in the summer, regardless of what they ask Brighton, you should pay up the 120 million pounds. Now, that seems insane in hindsight. However, at that time, you're looking at a midfielder who dominated the Arsenal midfield, the City midfield, the United midfield, home and away, the Chelsea midfield, and this was a high-performing midfielder, guys, in a team that performed mid-table. However, they were taking everything by storm, and Carlos Baleba was at the center of it. Especially if you guys look at the performance he put in against Manchester City, he was bulldozing midfielders that had just won a 4-peat. So this wasn't any other midfield, this was the Manchester City midfield. And this reminded you a little bit of Paul Pogba, because if you had watched that one compilation that Brighton posted, which was about 20 minutes of Baleba madness, everybody would have understood where the hype was coming from. And I'm not saying that all that was forgotten, which is why he still makes my list. The only reason why Baleba makes my list is because of what he did the season before this. Now, in hindsight now, we're seeing a Baleba who has not been performing for one entire year. Yes, he had performances in AFCON. In AFCON, everybody said he performed well back to his old ability. But you know what is the one thing I find very odd about Baleba? Let's say he had an off season and everybody gives him the excuse that it's because United tried to tap him up, and because of that he had his head swayed for a United move essentially. But if that's the case, what's to say that, let's say 3 years down the line, Baleba performs back to his old levels again, he's back to 24, 25 levels, and suddenly Real Madrid want him, or Barcelona want him, because they have the money now. Now, they're gonna put maybe 150 million up, and we don't want to sell him. But it's Real Madrid and Barcelona. They are the two clubs, I would say, in the world who could probably take players from us even if we want them. So if we're looking at that kind of situation, what's to say that Baleba does not do the same thing that he did with Brighton to us, against us, in 3 years' time? And essentially, it just reeks of bad mentality. I'm not saying anything about the player or his ability, not even the fact that he's a one-season wonder. But if it's to be believed that the whole reason that he is struggling this season is because we tried to tap him up and he could not keep up with the pressure anymore, well, that's not a player we want. Because in this midfield, the rebuild that we're trying to do right now, we can't take any chances. Because the way that Ineos is trying to build this team, we are targeting a 2028 Premier League title. We're going to be challenging next season, by the way. And the money that we're going to be spending in the summer is going to reflect that. Now, we can target the Premier League, but we'd probably realistically only challenge to win it the season after that. And Champions League would be the same thing. But at least we want to reach a level where we're challenging for the Premier League, where we're within top 3 spots, we're within about, let's say, 5, 6, 7 points of the top come March, April. And in the Champions League, you go to at least the quarterfinals, and if you can really do it, semi-finals. That would really be what I would call a successful season, along with picking up one of the cups. Now, to do all this, you need a midfield that is trusted, that is resilient, that will deliver whatever you ask of them for the money that you put in. And for Carlos Baleba, if they're asking anything above 70 million pounds, I think it's a bit too much. Considering that Baleba has had as bad of a season as he has had now, and let's say his first season was his debut season and he was coming into the league and he did put in a good performance. The following season is when he had his real breakthrough season, and that's when he was just tearing up the league. And then now he's had a very poor season for whatever reason. Now, I'm not saying that players can't have a bad season, but when we are putting in so much money at such a crucial point in our rebuild, do we want to trust a player like Baleba, who we don't really know what we're going to get from him? And That's why I say if his price point is about 50 million pounds and he is probably going to be the third midfielder, or let's say we're going to invest in two lower money midfielders and Baleba happens to be one of them from a 50 million pounds or less, I'll take Baleba happily. But if we're talking about 75 million or 80 million or 90 million, we might have to rethink all that once again. Anyways, option 2 is MatheusFernandes. Now, in this list, surprise, surprise, I don't have Elliot Anderson. And not because he's leaving for City, but even if he was still an option around Man United, I still wouldn't have Elliot Anderson for the only reason being that we can get players like MatheusFernandes who do a very similar job to him for almost half the price. MatheusFernandes would cost, what, 50 million pounds, you'd say? And considering that they are still in the relegation zone, it could be one of Tottenham, it could be West Ham or Nottingham Forest that go down, and we still don't know who, but it's looking more likely that it's going to be one of West Ham or Tottenham instead of Nottingham Forest. So MatheusFernandes happens to be one of the better aids that we can get in the Premier League, especially for line-breaking passes through to our wingers like Cunha, like Mbomo on the other side, or if we get an NDI, that would be perfect. So in that case, what I'm saying is we need line-breaking passes. And how about MatheusFernandes, who could be a third midfield option, along with one centre defensive midfielder that we buy and the number 1 centre midfielder pick. So all I'm saying is we need somebody that's dynamic, that's robust, that's played in the Premier League. How about somebody who's played at Sporting as well? So it's so small level that he's played at before. Fernandes has come from Sporting into West Ham and he's looked like one of their best players. He's given that midfield a level of control that they did not have in the past. And for that reason, MatheusFernandes goes number 2 on my list. Now, top of the list for centre midfielder is BrunoGuimaraes. Now let's just talk about BrunoGuimaraes, because this is one of the best midfield picks that we could get. Not in the Premier League, but we could even say in the world, considering what he offers our midfield. The number 1 thing that our midfield lacks at the moment is press resistance and at the same time physicality. BrunoGuimaraes gives you everything. This and a lot more. So what I'm talking about is a midfielder who, number 1, has had 5 years of Premier League experience, who's played in the Champions League almost 5 years or 6 years, give or take, and he's a Brazilian international who's going to play beside a player that we have had for 4 years, a legend of ours, you could even say indirectly. He's played beside them, and you know that they're going to give you one thing: consistent performances at a captain level performance. And BrunoGuimaraes takes everything that we need. What do we need? We need tenacity. You got that. If you want a deep line playmaker, you got that. If you want experience in the Premier League, you got that. If you want experience in the Champions League, you've also got that. So with Guimaraes coming in, especially from the Brazilian setup, you look at the players that we will have next season. We'll have Cunha, we'll have BrunoFernandes. That whole Portuguese speaking contingent is there. And if we get one of our left back picks, which I'll talk about in a future video, and we have Diogo Dalot, we have a good Portuguese and Brazilian cohort. He's going to slot in seamlessly. This is why Guimaraes at even at a 70, at an 80 million pounds would be a steal for me. Not because of, we could use him only for 5 years and then after we have to sell him or we have to release him. But think about what we can do in those 5 years, right? If we buy somebody like, let's say, Carlos Baleba, who is a 50-50, who could still be a meteoric superstar, but we're running a risk investing that money in a couple of years where we could take an advantage. Because look around the league. The one thing we're seeing in this league, guys, is that it is up for anybody to take on. Because City aren't the best. Yes, they won the Carabao Cup, but they've been very inconsistent throughout the league. And with a few players going in and out of the team, we don't know how it's going to work. If Pep leaves at the end of the season, maybe there's going to be problems there. Arsenal on their own. The only reason Arsenal have won the league this season, or will win the league this season, is because Pep's been off it. Then Liverpool's been off it. United started off very badly. These are the reasons why Arteta is going to win the league. But now, next season, we're going to all start from scratch. And with United having got that midfield in position, now we can just take it forward. And this is why this season, we can't take any chances. We can't run any risks of Carlos Baleba. He might be good, but we want a player who can deliver right now. And who better than BrunoGuimaraes? Even if it's 70, they're talking about 70 million euros, guys. 61 million pounds. That's even cheaper than what we signed Casemiro for. And he's younger than what Casemiro was when he came in. At the same time, he has Premier League experience. He's a Premier League captain. And he's one of the best midfielders you could get in the Premier League as it is. A Brazilian international who, as well, guys, I don't know if you've seen the stats. He already has 9 goals and 4 assists in the Premier League this season. Yeah, he has as many goals as Benjamin Sesko has. And so that tells you the kind of influence he can have even from deep lying positions where he's going to be a centre midfielder. At the same time, he's going to be a holding midfielder. This is why I put him at centre midfielder. And this is why he would be our number 1 primary target in those midfield positions for Man United this season. So talking about realistic options, by the way. So, of course, we'd love a Pedri, we'd love a Vitinha, we'd love those kind of options, but they're not really realistic this season, are they? And that's the reason. Comment down below who your midfield picks are, especially for centre midfielder, and then watch tomorrow's video for centre defensive midfielder and 3 options that I would put up for centre defensive midfielder that would really propel us to at least challenging for the league next season. So what are your thoughts? Comment down below and I'll see you on the next one.